Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. This is going to be the first unboxing video from the new place. And it's something a bit special that I hadn't really foreseen being able to do anytime soon. What we have here is Donnerschlag, Escape from Stalingrad. This is a game designed by Patrick Gebhardt and Pepito Shatsuguti, whose name I may or may not be pronouncing correctly, and it is from VUCA Simulations, who were kind enough to send me a few things. So let us open her up and take a look at what we have here in Donnerschlag. So if it is a bit echoey in here, and it is, I apologize. Hopefully by the time we do more of this type of stuff, we'll have that settled. I'm actually hoping for later today, but we'll see what we get. So this is not shrink wrap. This did not come shrink wrapped. Instead, they are stuck together with these VUCA Simulations stickers. Now, unlike sometimes when folks do this, like Half Price Books, for example, and you can't remove them without destroying the box or the finish, these came off very, very easily. So I don't think we're going to save those. So we'll just get rid of them. And what we have here is, so VUCA is a German company, so, which is unusual, right? We don't often see Hex Encounter stuff out of Germany. This game interested me specifically because it's East Front, and I'm very interested to take a look at it. So we'll open her up. We have nice thick box, clearly like a European box format, but you know, that is merely a detail. We have a rule book. Oh boy. This is going to be fancy, I could tell. All right, so the rule book is, I never remember whether it's A4 or A5, but it's one of those two, okay? We have full color, glossy paper. And lest anyone wonder, yes, the rules are in English. Manufactured and distributed by VUCA Simulations, a brand of Brunken and Gebhardt GmbH. All rights reserved, okay. Graphic artists by P. Bezerka and G. Chisa. Let's not rely on me pronouncing those names. So, nice looking rule book. We have a total of 10 pages of rules here, which are relatively well illustrated with examples and the like. So, it does not appear to be an immensely complicated game. And we have a bunch of historical notes in the back here as well. Now this is, a German attempt to break the Paulus's Sixth Army out of the Stalingrad pocket. So let's see what we have here. Interesting looking map, which is mounted, by the way, which is a detail I had not foreseen. So we have 3 decks of cards, which are held together by these sort of paper bands. We have what appears to be a Soviet combat deck, a German combat deck, and an activation deck. So I don't know much about the mechanics here. So I'm trying to open this while retaining the paper bands so that I can put them back in the paper bands when I'm done, because I don't know where my silicone bands are at this exact moment. So thanks again to VUCA for sending these to me, and they arrived shockingly quickly. So these cards feel really nice. They're really smooth. So clearly there's a German activation deck and a Soviet activation deck. And it looks like you are activating, at least for the Soviets, you're activating specific formations. In this case, I think we're talking about 2nd Guards Army or 51st Army. So I think you can activate units from one of those 2 armies. And so there's red and blue units. So that's interesting. Okay. I don't know how many Soviet armies we're talking about in the theater here. Well, in the whole, not the whole East Front, obviously, but in terms of who are in this area. So here's more Soviet cards, more German cards. So it looks like you're activating units by color, and pretty much we have these 2 army level commands. Looks like we have an overall Soviet thing here happening as well. That's interesting. Okay, I'm not familiar enough with this particular engagement, And then looks like you can activate, here's your whole what looks like your whole 23rd Panzer Division. You got several of those for some Romanian infantry, Romanian cavalry. So, as is maybe not shocking, it looks like the differences in command are being modeled by different methods of activation within the mechanics. Again, that's not surprising. We've seen that kind of thing before, kind of all over the place. I don't know about on this particular topic, but again, I'm trying to slide these out without disturbing the bands too much. I want to at least look at some of the combat cards. Now there's dice in here too, so in fact we have a red and a black die, thematically more or less appropriate, so that's good. Okay, Beutepanzer, loot tank, interesting. Okay, so these are very interesting. Don't know what any of these do. Looks like there are tactical events that give shifts. How this mechanism works is a great question. I think we're about to move past the cards and start looking at the rest of the components. Okay, so the counters are pretty striking. These are what, to me, look like about 9/16 inch counters. I am sure that's not the size. I'm sure they are a metric size. They are on a medium weight brown core stock, and they are pre-rounded. So for those who don't wish to deal with the realities of clipping your unrounded counters, these feel like they come out of the sheets very easily, and you can see the color coding on these units. It does not look like... I have actually heard from some people who claim to store their pre-rounded counters in the sheets, and I don't understand how that is supposed to actually work. I would not want to try and squeeze these back into the sheets. The counters look very nice. They're not overly complicated counters. On these Soviet counters, for example, you have a unit type, a color band, a dot, which means something. What I am guessing is either a combat and a movement value. That's probably what this is, combat and movement. Square for combat, hex for movement. That would make sense. Some of them are yellow. Presumably that means something. This is looks like a motorized or mechanized infantry, so this is probably a mechanized movement type. Looks like you have an armored movement type as well. So more information on the counters than might be immediately obvious. Fair number of units. We have some markers for breached minefields, among other things. Oh, here, these are not counters. So there's, wait a minute. So there's 2 sheets of counters. So not an enormous game counter-wise, and I'm completely spitballing this, but there's probably 300 or 400 counters in this game. 234 counters. And then the rest of these are these setup displays, which are really quite nice. These are on, feels like the same stock as the counters, except the finish feels a little bit different. Here's the Escape from Stalingrad X's setup display reinforcements. On the back, we have what looks like a contour map of the play area. Here is a Soviet setup display. Wonder what the play time on this thing is. Does it say on the box? This is playing time 5 to 8 hours. And at a glance, I can't vouch for the accuracy of that statement, but that estimate does not look ridiculous based on what I am seeing. And here is 2 player aids, which are on the same hugely heavy card stock. Again, feels like the same stuff or thicker as the counters. And on the front, you've got a sequence of play and a CRT and a TEC. And on the back, you have an extended sequence of play. So the player aids look really pretty nice. Overall component quality here is very strong. I can tell you that. And as mentioned, we have a mounted map. One of the realities of being in a new place is that eventually we're going to have room to set this kind of stuff up. But right now we're still working with the sort of limitations of the old setup because I'm on that same table. Nice mounted map. It is pooching a fair amount. You're going to need to work at making this thing lay flat or put it under plexi, which kind of defeats the purpose of having the mounted map in the first place. So here's the Don River. It goes up this way. Stalingrad itself is not on the map. Remember, this is the attempt to break out the 6th Army, and it looks like they're pretty much going to get stuffed, as that attempt was historically unsuccessful. Let me put it that way. So there's kind of two areas here. There's the play area, which is this kind of bluish white area, and there's these various off-map areas which contain holding areas for all the different cards and a couple of tracks as well. So this looks super interesting, and you know, with a 5 to 8 hour playtime, that suggests that it's not going to be that much of a challenge to get this thing to the table, unlike many other games that I have coverage of here on Ardwulf's Lair, for example. The component quality is very high. I would go so far as to say it's... So, I feel like I want to kind of put hex and counter war games, like traditional war games, in a bit of a different category from other types of games. And a lot of the types of war games that have had nicer component quality than this are not traditional hex and counter war games, where this is. And hex and counter should be understood to fairly loosely in this context, right? A hex and counter game does not necessarily have to have hexes, although it does kind of need to have counters. But in this case, it has both. So what we're looking at is a traditional war game, a war game that looks very solid. We're not entirely successful getting these cards back in the band. The box cover is really nice. It's a very striking box cover. Very much looking forward to giving this a whirl, actually. Hopefully we'll have time to do that before too long. Very interesting looking game, Donnerschlag, Escape from Stalingrad from VUCA Simulations. Once again, thanks to VUCA. Thanks to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair who enable me to make this and other types of content, and without whose support of all kinds, it would be much more difficult to do this stuff. Thanks for watching. If you found the video helpful or informative, please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. New content is coming out every week. Be sure to tune in for the Monday streams, and until next time, happy wargaming.